Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cuyahoga Heights School Board of Education regular meeting. We are at the Bonner Ray Media Center, and it is 7 p.m. Mr. Muccio, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Mrs. Schukert.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here.
Mr. Naaman.
Here.
Mr. Dobbins.
Here. I want to welcome everyone to the Board of Education meeting. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome all the students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in actions of the board may participate during the meeting, during the public comments portion of the meeting. However, we ask that you identify yourself on the board sign-in sheet, which is typically back on that orange counter back there. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available to review on our school district's website, and we ask that you silence your cell phones during the meeting. And with that, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So first order of business is I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, that was quick. Mr. Naaman, second, please. Are there any changes to the agenda, or are we set? Okay. Very good. Are there any comments from the public tonight?
We need to
vote.
We need to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, we need to
vote on the...
Oh, I probably, okay. This is my first meeting, so bear with me. My first meeting as president. So we need to approve the agenda as submitted. Mr. Muccio?
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Okay, now we move on to comments from the public. I don't know that anyone has entered anything on the sign-in sheet. If you wouldn't mind, thank you. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next one. And the next item, I'm going to shift the attention to Mr. Evans and his administrative team for the Students of the Month.
Okay, and before we start our presentation for Students of the Month, I'd like to welcome back two very special guests to Cuyahoga Heights tonight, two former employees that are here for the recognition, but Tom Zendry, former high school, middle school principal, and Laura Garrett, former superintendent and high school, middle school principal. Welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have Tom and Laura back in the building. Laura asked me to hurry up the ceremony tonight because she knew I had to get the suit back by 9 o'clock to the rental place, so thanks, Laura. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pat Coleman, middle school, high school principal for Students of the Month.
For sure. Thank you, Mr. Evans. And yeah, Laura, Tom, from time to time, about once a month, they still get like a letter from a furniture vendor or something wanting your attention, so I handle those for you. All right, so it's my honor to recognize our middle school and high school Students of the Month for the month of January. We're going to start with 6th grade and work up to 12th grade. As I call those students up, I'm going to talk about them, say some nice things about them, and hopefully embarrass them a little bit. We'll ask them to scoot down. We'll call it the elementary students. Then after all students have been recognized, we'll have the board members shake their hands. We'll get a photo opportunity on the steps, and that'll be the game plan. All right, but to get started, our 6th grade Student of the Month for the month of January is Zach Wittenmeyer. Come on up, Zach. All right. Zach comes to us from the village of Valley View. Mom is Kim, dad is Matt, stepdad is here, I think, Brian Gira. He has one sibling, Grace, who is a 12th grader here at the high school. As I always do, I asked Zach about his future plans, and he says, this is great, he said, I don't know for certain. So I pressed him a little bit. He said, well, I really like the idea of writing code and creating apps and software applications. He said, he asked one probing question, he some good stuff there. So he said, I want to go to college. He's not sure where, so I kind of said, well, you thinking far away to school or close to home? He thought for a second and said, I think I want to go far away. We'll see how that pans. His favorite class, he said, is technology class. He said it's something I'm really interested in. I asked him about his favorite teacher, and he said Mrs. Andreski, who's currently out right now. Mrs. Andreski's going to take care of her baby. She'll be back in April. Of Mrs. Andreski, Zach said she's really nice. She makes learning very fun. And then the sixth grade team nominated Zach, and they had the following to say about him. Zach can always be counted on to do the right thing. He continually strives to do his best in all academic areas. He's friendly, he's courteous, he's polite in his interactions with his peers and teachers alike. Keep up the good work, Zach, from the sixth grade team. Congratulations. Good stuff. Next up, Megan Mays, our seventh grade student. Okay. Megan also comes to us from the village of Valley View. It's going to be a clean sweep for Valley View tonight. We'll get some variety going at the high school level. But again, also from the village of Valley View. Mom is Amy, dad is Eric. Megan has two brothers, Connor, who's graduating from St. Ignatius this year, and Kevin, who is a freshman at St. Ignatius. Both brothers, like Megan, attended the middle school here. I asked Megan about future plans. This one was interesting. She said she wants to focus on a career in dermatology. I asked her, that's a unique one. So I said, well, how did we stumble upon this? This is interesting. And she said, well, I love the show Dr. Pimple Popper. Yes. And I just think it's the coolest thing. What a great country, you know? Favorite class is math. She says, I like numbers at work. Her favorite teacher, very well-rounded, so science for a career. Favorite class is math. Favorite teacher is a social studies teacher, Mr. Tartera. And she says, of Mr. Tartera, he teaches us, but he does a really good job of making things fun. And the seventh grade team had the following to say for Megan. Megan demonstrates daily a solid work ethic as evidenced by her grades. She participates in class, sharing her insightful responses, and is dedicated to her classes. She also has an award-winning personality. She is pleasant, she's respectful, and she's courteous to others. For all of these reasons, we nominate Megan as seventh grade student of the month for the month. Yeah. Congratulations, Megan. Eighth grade student of the month is Charles Lakis. Okay, like I said, clean sweep comes to us from the village of Valley View. Mom is Karen, dad is Scott. Charles explained he has no siblings. And for future plans, he says he wants to be an actor. He says, I'm a big theater man. Charles is playing the Sultan in our spring play, Aladdin. And he's been a cast member in our play for at least the last 2 years. He says he does want to attend a 4-year college, and he wants to focus on drama or theater for a degree. I asked Charles about his favorite class, and he said, I really like choir. And when I asked him to talk a little bit more about that, he said, I just like to sing. So I tried to pin him down to like a favorite karaoke song or something. He just couldn't nail one down. So I had too many to choose from. Favorite teacher, kind of staying with the fine arts theme, he said Mr. Sokol. Of Mr. Sokol, he's a really nice guy, and I just really enjoyed working with him a lot. Working with him so much after school and singing in class. And then the 8th grade team had the following to say about Charles. Charles is an unassuming and quiet young man who hasn't gone unnoticed by his teachers. His polite, respectful behavior are consistent with his peers and his teachers. His kindness and willingness to work hard are qualities that teachers appreciate in our students. We are very lucky to have Charles on our 8th grade team. So again, congratulations to Charles Lakis, 8th grade student of the month. High school, Jerry Cowling. Here, all right. All right. So Jared comes to us from the village of Cuyahoga Heights. Mom is Vanessa, dad is Jason. Jared explains that he has one sibling, an older sister, Ariel, who's a Brecksville Broadview Heights graduate. In terms of future plans, Jared explained that he wants to become an arson investigator one day. He said, I've always liked the idea of being a detective and investigating things, plus my dad's a firefighter. Puts a bow on all that. Asked him about his favorite class, he said world history. I asked him to talk a little bit more about that. He said, I just like history. I definitely prefer world history as American, as opposed to American history, so world history. Favorite teacher, he said Mr. Patterson. And of Mr. Patterson, he said he's really funny, he's a little bit sarcastic, but really just a fun and entertaining teacher. And a little trivia on Mr. Patterson, he actually started off as a theater major, Charles. So you might end up teaching ninth grade physical science. And Mr. Durazio nominated Jared for Student of the Month, and of Jared, Mr. Durazio had the following to say. Jared Cowling has had an outstanding start to the school year in applied algebra. He does what he's supposed to do on a daily basis. Jared is always willing to help others as well as the teacher. He takes correction in a mature manner, and he truly wants to do his best all the time. Jared is a pleasure to work with, and I look forward to having him in class the rest of the school year. So again, congratulations to Jared Cowling. Thank you. Okay, 10th grade student of the month, Hope Dizek. Come on up, Hope.
Oh, look at me.
She might not be here. I will embarrass her tomorrow in school. Pop into one of her classes. 11th grade student of the month, Riley Tynan. Come on up, Riley. I think it's the first official student of the month who's taller than me. Good work.
That's
Good work
good.
on that, Riley.
Coach Tartaro likes that.
He does. Okay, comes to us, to round things out, comes to us from the village of Brooklyn Heights. Mom is Carissa, dad is Michael. Riley has two siblings, one brother and one sister. His brother is a sophomore at BW, and his sister's a freshman here at the high school, Alyssa. I asked Riley about future plans, and he said he definitely wants to attend a four-year college. He wants to play either baseball, to be very clear, baseball is his number one sport right now, or basketball. Basketball's number two. Mr. Tadera might not like that.
She's not here, don't worry about
Those are the
it.
facts of the case.
We won't tell him, Riley.
Those are the facts of the case. In terms of academics, he says he plans on focusing on pre-law and wants to work as an attorney one day. I asked him about his favorite class, kind of in alignment with that. He said government. Seems really interesting stuff to learn about. And I asked him about his favorite teacher, and he said Dr. Roy. Of Dr. Roy, he said, I always like to hear his opinion on things. He knows what he's talking about, and if I'm wondering about something, I like to hear his perspective on things. And then Riley was nominated by Coach Martin, Al Martin, the algebra teacher. Of Riley, Coach Martin had the following to say, Riley is a consistent high performer in Algebra 2. Riley is not satisfied until he understands each problem completely. Riley helps his classmates by his willingness to ask questions and explain his answers. Good stuff. So again, congratulations, our 11th grade student of the month. Okay. Last, certainly not least, 12th grade student of the month for the month of January is Abby Zendry. Come on up, Abby. There you go. And Abby's a senior, so she's making a little extra TLC tonight on the student of the month, so bear with us. I remember, around this time last year, Mr. Evans used to talk about some of our seniors and them leaving and how it kind of tugs a little bit. Abby's a person I got to know pretty well, and she's going to be one of these seniors that's left quite a legacy and imprint around here, and she will be missed in a lot of ways. But without further ado, 12th grade student of the month for the month of January, Abby Zendry. Mom is Kathy, dad is Tom. Comes to us from the village of Cuyahoga Heights. One older brother, Andrew, who is a 2017 graduate of St. Ignatius. She explained Andrew's currently attending Northeastern University. In fact, he's currently studying abroad in Scotland and is studying to become a biochemical engineer. That's some nerdy stuff, pretty good. Future plans for Abby. I've gone back and forth on this for about a year now. So we're going to get this answer soon. She says it's complicated. Tennessee University is her number one, but she is waiting on a potential scholarship opportunity from the University of St. Louis. So St. Louis is smart. They'll get that award letter out in the mail soon before they lose a great kid to Tennessee, right? But two great schools where they'd obviously be very fortunate to have Abby there. In terms of majors, she said she's planning on focusing on psychology and wants to work as a clinical psychologist. Favorite class in alignment with this is AP Psych. She says of AP Psych, I find it so interesting. This is the first class where it's truly enjoyable to take notes and learn about all this amazing content. Asked her about her favorite teacher, and she explained Coach Zawatsky, her math teacher. Of Coach Zawatsky, she explained, we have a very close relationship because of soccer. As a result, her class is a very easy environment to ask questions, and we have great discussions. A couple more questions, again, since she's departing senior. Favorite memory here? And she said, just the soccer team every year. That team has helped create some of the best friendships that I have. I asked what she'll miss most about Cuyahoga Heights. And she said, I'll miss how comfortable I feel. I've been here for so long. And then lastly, and her parents are both educators, so they might need to leave for this. Is there one more accomplishment before you leave that you're looking forward to? She said, senior skip day. Some kids don't get offended, reading doctor's notes and all. Personal business. She said senior skip day, but she had a great rationale. She said, I'm really looking forward to having one last day with my friends before we all set out on our new adventure. So really good stuff. Abby, congratulations. You've had a great career. Looking forward to that. All right. I will continue you guys up here and hand it off to Mrs. Houchin.
All right, I'm super excited this evening to be able to recognize our Students of the Month from the elementary school. And this month we are recognizing third graders. So I'm going to start with Liam Kmetz. Come on up, Liam. I went in this order on purpose. Liam has a twin brother, and his name, it starts with an E, so Liam is usually called last. So I thought, I'll start with Liam. Liam lives in Valley View with his parents, Colleen and Kevin, and his sister, Ava, who's in 7th grade. He said, when I talked to him today, that his favorite subject is math. And I asked him why, and he said, because we play fun games and we learn things through songs. And they do. I see that all the time when I go up there. His favorite specials are PE and music. And what does he like to do outside of school? Kickball, sports, baseball, skiing, pickleball, tennis, golf, football, and basketball. All of those were named. When he grows up, he wants to work at Topgolf to drive carts and pick up balls. And I asked him if he had seen what just happened at Topgolf on Monday. I said, did you see what happened to the guy who drives that? And he said, yes, and then we went later that day. So he still wants to do it, even though the guy fell in the hole at Topgolf. I thought that was great. He wanted me to say to his parents, thank you for bringing me to this school from Texas. Because he did not like the school in Texas. His teachers, who are both here this evening, Mrs. Collins and Mrs. Smith, had this to say about Liam. Liam is a very hardworking student. If things become difficult, he advocates for himself and asks for help to make sure he understands what he is learning. Liam is a friend to all and a great role model for his peers. Liam leads by example. Liam always brings a big smile to class, and it's an absolute pleasure to have in class. Congratulations, Liam. Got it. All right, next we have third grader Bella Jaxco. Come on up, Bella. Bella wore her lipstick this evening.
Matches perfectly with her dress.
Isn't it great? Yes. Isabella, who prefers to go by Bella, Jaxco, lives in Brooklyn Heights with her mom, Kathy Jaxco, and her cat, Snickers. She has a baby sister, Violet, who was just born. How many days ago? 6 days ago. And as Bella said, she was an early baby, so she's in the hospital because she's only 2 pounds something. So she's very tiny, but she's excited to have that new baby sister. Her dad, Kevin, lives in Broadview Heights. Her favorite subject is also math because she likes counting and multiplication. And when I asked her what her favorite special was, she said all of them. She could not make a choice. When I asked her what she likes to do outside of school, she said, ride my bike and play with my neighbors. And then she's involved in dance. She does acro and hoop, which I didn't even know there was a hoop class. She's going to show those skills off to me. And she does that in Maple Heights. And when she grows up, she wants to be a veterinarian and a scientist. And as a scientist, she wants to make cures for animals. To her mom, she said, "Thank you for taking me to Disney World with my cousins and everyone." She was very excited about that. And her teachers had this to say about her. "Isabella is an extremely happy student. She is generous and kind to everyone she meets throughout her day. Bella has put forth so much effort this year. She tries very hard to pay attention and to complete her classwork each and every day. Bella is a very bright girl with many creative ideas. We are so happy that Bella is one of our students this year. Congratulations, Bella." I can say for sure Bella has been working very hard this year, so we're proud of her. Now we have a third this evening, and I will tell you, usually we only have two, but the third grade teachers came and said, "We're going to be rule breakers." What do you mean? And they said, "Well, we really can't pick just two. We have to pick a third." And when they told me the situation, I said, "All right, we'll make an exception this time." So you're not seeing double, it's Enzo. Now they said these two both really deserve this honor. They were not just doing this because they were twins, but they certainly were not going to pick one over the other because they both deserve it. So I spoke with Enzo yesterday. He lives in Valley View with his parents, Colleen and Kevin, and his sister Ava, right? No pets. Tell me no pets. His favorite subject is reading, and he said it's because I love to read. And again, all of the specials are his favorite. When I asked him what he likes to do, he said kickball, sports, baseball, skiing, pickleball, tennis, golf, football, and basketball. And they said, I did actually interview Enzo first, and Liam said, same as my favorite. Now this is my favorite answer. What do you want to be when you grow up? He said, a magician. And I asked him how he decided to be a magician, and he said when he was on a cruise, he got picked to go up on stage with the magician, and the magician gave him a magic kit, and he has since been very interested in magic. So he has to come and show that off to me as well. To his parents, he said, thank you for choosing the right things for me, and for the surprises you gave me. And his teachers said this. Enzo is an extremely kind, caring, and respectful young man. He works very hard to complete his classwork and takes the time to complete it neatly and correctly. Enzo is a great example to his peers. He always does what is expected of him, even when no one is watching. Enzo is a wonderful student, and we are very pleased to have the opportunity to teach him this year. Congratulations, Enzo. All of our students of the month, many of you I had when you were over at the elementary. And we're going to shake hands with the board members. We're going to get some pictures. And then you're welcome to stay if you'd like, or you can go. And I always tell my students that I will recommend you take them for ice cream, even though it's cold. All right.
Next up on the agenda would be the treasurer's business. Mr. Muccio?
Thank
Or
you,
do I need to,
President.
go ahead, I'm sorry. Do I need to make a motion to approve the minutes? Okay. So, need a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th, 2020 organizational meeting as found in attachment T1. So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Schukert. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Muccio?
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Was that your segment? If it was,
Yeah, for
okay,
minutes.
go for it.
Got it. So we have 5A, which is the motion to approve the minutes of the January 8th, 2020 organizational meeting as found in attachment T1. 6A, accept bank reconciliation. Motion to accept bank reconciliation, financial reports, and payments for board review as of December 31st, 2019, as prepared and certified by the treasurer's accurate as found in attachment T2. 6B, motion to approve new vendors to the school district for W-9s attached as found in attachment T3. 6C, motion to accept the attached list of donations received through December 31st, 2020 as found in attachment T4. 6D, motion to approve a modification of the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2020 as found in attachment T5. And 6E, motion to approve purchase orders over $5,000 as found in attachment T6.
Now, do we make a motion to approve the treasurer's consent agenda? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's business consent agenda motions.
Second.
Mr. Schukert seconds. Any discussion?
Yep, just roll through these. So, one thing I wanted to do, and everybody has in front of them, is the general fund for the year. I kind of wanted to spend some time to go through it, kind of 3 times. First at the beginning of the year, middle now, and then towards the end, just to see where we're at. I think it's a good practice, just me, to go through it. Everybody gets familiar with the general fund more. And as we do it, in short segments, everybody gets more familiar with it, and, we don't have to spend more time, when the 5-year forecast comes up or later on. So I'll go through these reports that everybody has in front of them. And if anybody has any questions or whatnot, just, let me know. We'll go through it. As we look at our first sheet, T2D, that everybody has on top, this is our lead sheet. This is kind of the title page for our general fund. We have our beginning balance, B1, $13,870,633. That's our beginning balance for what we started for the general fund. And then we have revenues on the top, expenditures on the bottom as we go through. The green would be estimates for the months that we haven't closed yet. And then we have our total column in N. And we can see in Q, those figures are from our November 2019 5-year forecast. And they're pretty much the same. We have one difference in row 7, all their operating revenue. That actually has gone up from $1,506,000 in column Q to now in column N, $1,556,000, so about $50,000, and we'll talk about that more, why. Below we have in orange, so if we're looking in row 13 or 14, column N, in the orange, it's $16,121,128. So that's what we're thinking that the general fund is going to bring in as far as revenue goes for the whole year. Then we go to the second half of the page, the bottom half, the expenditures, and all of those align to the November 2019 5-year forecast. So as we look, personnel services, row 15 in column N, $8.6 million. It's the same figure in column Q, 8.6, and the totals for both, $16,875,000. So we're right on schedule for what we thought the expenses would be at the 5-year forecast time period. Our ending balance this year is $13.1 million, so column N, row 31, and that's what we're thinking at this time. But again, these numbers are conservative, as we'll go through. So we're hopeful that we'll do better than 13.1. Below in orange and yellow, we have when we certified as estimated revenue and when we appropriated. So we have not changed appropriations since we did appropriate that figure 9/18/2019. And we are modifying our estimated revenues this board meeting for that $50,000 difference that we have. As we turn to our next page, T2E, these are going to be our tax revenue lines that we have. So we're looking at the yellow at the top, general property, tangible personal property, and property tax allocation. And then below, we have each one of those lines, and those lines again come from that lead sheet, broken out in colors, blue, pink, and green. So for blue, our general property taxes, we can see the white boxes that are highlighted going forward in January, February, March, and May. Those are the time periods in which we're expected to receive revenue from our property taxes, which would be class 1 and 2 on row 1. We're still looking at our estimate of $8.6 million all the way to the right-hand side in orange, and we're right on target. So again, that's conservative, that 8.6. And below that, we have our delinquent real property taxes. That's very conservative on row 2 at $50,000. So we're hopeful in March, when we fully recognize what that number is going to be, it's going to be a lot higher than $50,000. So when we close March and we come back in April, hopefully we're going to be talking a higher number than the $50,000 that we're looking at right now. In pink, we have our tangible personal property tax. That's our public utility personal property taxes. Our estimate's $2.5 million. And we're going to hit that mark, if not be a little bit higher than that. In green, we have our homestead and the rollbacks, but the titles of those changed to non-business credit and owner-occupied credit. We have row 8, which is House Bill 49, the reimbursement of the TPP phase-out. So that's the figure that's going down by about $200,000 every year. We receive that money from the state in 2 payments, one in November, and then we have the little box in May, when we're going to expect that. So half comes in November, the other half we're going to see in May, and that's why we see our 50% for the estimate and what we received. Below, we have definitions, just in case, for any of the items that we're looking at. We can keep going from there.
Can you tell me
Yeah.
in May, what property tax comes in May?
Yeah, so we have January, February, March on row 1, we get our tax advances. So we do a resolution to the county that we send. We say we want advances on this money instead of getting one lump sum. In May, we actually get the first advance of the next coming year. So it's weird how the county does it. Really, that should be in July, and we shouldn't even see a box here if we properly want to account for it in the right time period.
Yeah.
But the county gives us that May amount, which I'm thinking is going to be about $300,000 from that lead sheet coming in. So it's all time periods in which, so school district is 7/1 is 6/30, so half of a calendar year. Then you have calendar years, which are 12 months, and then they're taking this one payment and they're putting it kind of in a different, time period. So everything is different time period. There's a lot of moving parts when we kind of look at
thought
everything.
that was
calculated.
odd.
It is.
For the time period, that's all.
It's very,
Okay.
and that's just how Cuyahoga County does it for all school districts that are in it too.
Thank you
so.
for the explanation.
Yep. As we look at our next sheet, T2F, this is the state aid that we get, our restricted and unrestricted. We have in yellow at the top our 2 lines. Again, those come from our lead sheets that we have. Then we have everything split out. We do see a difference between October and November. So the state came back with a new way of how they're calculating state aid. So no longer is it lines 1 through 11, how it was split out between the opportunity grant, targeted assistance, K through 3 literacy, but now we're seeing just row 12, which is just foundation formula. So they're just lumping everything in to one line item. And that's a new way that the state is doing it. And they didn't start at the beginning of the year, they started a portion into this current fiscal year.
And isn't that, like, potentially they could hide how they're getting these numbers?
It's not as transparent.
Because they don't break it down like you have it broken down in these other different categories.
Correct.
Does the item on line 12, does that sum, do those pieces sum to 178?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, that's taking everything,
So in essence, it's a wash?
Yep.
Okay.
yep.
Do you expect that, do you have any reason to believe that that would change, or do you think that would continue?
No, that's not going to change.
Okay.
No, so we're going to recognize our estimate of the $533,844 all the way to the right. We've received half of that, $269,000. So in total, we're just going to receive our $533,000. It's just the way that it shows on the books for October, moving everything from those lines and putting everything to the foundation
So
formula.
it basically goes into one bucket as opposed to 11 pieces?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Before, we had it in those separate 11 buckets, but no longer, the state's going to lump everything into just the one line.
Didn't give a rationale for it, just said that was how they're going to move forward with it.
These
so.
were the numbers that you had anticipated? Or
Correct.
you knew that these were the categories and how much you were going to get?
Correct. Yeah, if we were to go back in time and look at a couple, prior months, July, August, or September, we would see estimates for all of those line items for opportunity grant, targeted assistance, K through 3 literacy, but I had to back out those estimates and lump everything just on line 12. So it's just a matter of backing everything out from 1 through 11 and putting it on the new line 12. Again, this is something that came from the state for all school districts in it. I was comfortable with it before. I think it was a good process. Everything was broken out. You could really identify, what's coming in for different line items.
The skeptic doesn't like that on the state level. That trend of them wanting to lump it together.
Yeah.
A lot of work's gone into a lot of these being separate funds, separate grants. So I guess the skeptic in me doesn't, although they haven't given any kind of rationale on any level as to why it was going to be done that way. That was kind of a snap decision, and here it is. So
There's no transparency as far as what the formula is for it.
no.
And so, is it consistent from district to district?
Right.
Not if, I mean, if you're taking 11 items and grouping them together.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was more, more transparent, more easy to kind of see how everything is flowing through funding-wise from the state. Now, with everything lumped into just that one line item, you can't really separate and see how much is coming for transportation or special aid, additional funds or opportunity grant or targeted assistance. And below, we can see the definitions of each one of those for unrestricted grants and aid on the left-hand side and the bottom, and then on the right is restricted, those definitions. So no longer do, we kind of, see how the funding goes according to those definitions, but now it's just all lumped into the just one line foundation formula that we
So
have.
should we as a board expect this, I believe it's a $533,000 estimate, should we expect that to continue this fiscal year and then the next fiscal year, and then it'll be open for review?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
With the biennial budget, the governor's pretty much said that there's not going to be a change in the foundation formula and
Okay.
that funding formula. He considers his add-on to be the wellness dollars that he sent districts' ways, not accounting for the huge amounts of money that districts will lose that choice. So there's some that in Columbus that still believe that they've given additional funding to schools and not looking at the total bottom line that, and we'll talk about that choice a little bit later, that many districts in Cuyahoga County, of the 32 districts in the Cuyahoga County, 28 districts will net wise receive less money from the state. So,
And conversely here, how does the state know how we're appropriating the money? Like if we're spending the money in the right categories?
Those are unrestricted, so.
Oh, okay.
There's no restriction
Okay.
on it for those ones. But one cool thing I did add is, if we look at the definition for opportunity grant, we can see as we kind of, pan across the sheet, the per pupil amount right now for fiscal '20 is $6,020. Before, it was in fiscal '19, $6,020, so there was no increase. It was the same, it was flat. Before that, in fiscal '18, it was $6,010, so it just went up $10. Before that, it was just $6,000 in fiscal '17, and before that, it was $5,900 in fiscal '16. So between '16 and '17, it went up $100, and then between '17 to '18, it went up just $10, and then again from '18 to '19, $10, and now it's flat for the next 2 years in the governor's biennial budget. And what Mr. Evans was saying, that those wellness funds that we get, which we book in Fund 467, essentially was that increase right there. So it's just taking that increase, and instead of giving it in the unrestricted aid, we're now calling it wellness funds and putting it to a whole new fund. So it's the same, so in my eyes, we were always going to get, an increase, but instead of just putting the increase as it had been, in the opportunity grant line, they're not bumping that up, they're keeping it flat, and they're saying, okay, let's create this new fund that we have, which is Fund 467, the wellness funds, and that's essentially that raise right there, but they're just highlighting that, so. Just a different way to look at it.
and I just think that's a compromise between the governor and the legislature, because the governor wanted money directed towards wellness. The legislature said, well, we're not going to give you any more funding on top of education, so we're going to divert money. So that was the end result. So the wellness was definitely part of his campaign, part of what he ran for governor on, and, so that he's earmarked those funds, but then it comes out the other end, so it doesn't.
Yeah. And going through, if we look at line 16, that's our casino tax revenue. We get it twice a year in those boxes. So in January, we're going to see the other half to that casino tax revenue that we have. In rows 20 and 21, we see zeros right now, but there should be some amounts being booked there. The reason it's not, and we have our estimates all the way to the right, is when the state revamped this different way, the very first new foundation settlement that came to districts, they didn't have designated coding for those two line items, which would be economic disadvantage funding and career tech education funding. Then on the and then they admitted that they didn't. And then on the next one, they said, well, just be sure at the end of the year to make sure, the amounts that you book on those lines match up to what it is, which for us is going to be $6,900 for economic disadvantage and career tech education funding, $1,500. So I'm going to work more with Kathy on how we get into a nice, routine of booking foundation payments, because before we had it locked down, July, August, September, and then the state completely changed the way it was doing it, so we just have to, get familiar with how we book it, so we'll work on that. Catastrophic cost reimbursement, we have our box in June, when we're anticipating to see the bulk of that money coming through to us. And that's pretty much what makes up our state aid. Our next sheet that we look at, T2G, this is all their operating revenue. So yellow, again, that's coming from top of the page. It's coming from our lead sheet. The new item that we have on our lead sheet is row 28. That's the real estate assessment, $50,000 that we saw come in. Sent everybody an email and description on it, so everybody's familiar with why that came in from Cuyahoga County. It's not going to be a year-to-year thing. That's going to be, if it ever does come, it's going to be spread out over 6 years or whatnot. So, the other items I just want to highlight, 2, that's the tuition amounts coming for fiscal 20. We're at about 80% right now of our estimate, $462,000. I have a little amount set aside, row 3, for people prepaying for fiscal 21's tuition, about $84,000 coming in. And there's always a timing difference too. So we're going to see people prepay, that first payment coming in where we're going to book it in this fiscal year. So we can't fully, recognize, tuition within a fiscal year. There's always going to be some lapse of, people prepaying and, what we see. So on that line 2, we're not really seeing 100% of that tuition, but rather we're seeing 80%, I can say, because we had some people prepay for that line that was booked in the previous year. On row 4 and 5, this is the SF tuition for court place students. We booked 160 for the SF on row 4. Row 5 is for special education, SF court place students. That's $18,000 at this point. Our consultant, Tim O'Keefe, helps us with this. We get this twice a year coming. And it's subjective in the sense that it's all court-placed with relative or foster care. So if those children are removed from that court placement, we wouldn't see those funds coming through from the state. So trying to gauge, how much, it's kind of hard because, those can come and go pretty quickly on a court order. 6, 7, and 8, more 6 and 7 are our investments. 8 is just the money that we have sitting for general operations that we do get small interest on if we do. But 6 and 7 are our main ones. I've been pretty aggressively trying to invest in 7, which is Star, 6, which is Red Tree. The money, is just there. It's kind of locked away. We know it's locked in those different CDs, you can say, for, so many years on out. So those are kind of, cemented in place. Star Ohio, we know if we look at the bottom portion of the sheet, row 7, the monthly average yield has gone from 2.4 in July to 2.2, 2.2, 2.07, 1.9, and 1.8 right now for December. So that's been going down. Red Tree, those are locked in because we've locked in those CDs over the course of so many years, so that's really not going to change. But we have been seeing our Star Ohio go down. But again, if we look at our revenue, I've been trying to, keep as much there in Star and not move it, if we don't need to our operating account. So what I'm doing is trying to maximize our interest because we get the most from Star as opposed to Huntington Hybrid. And we do see a small fee. The bank charges us a fee regardless of holding our cash and positive pay and checks we cut and whatnot. But it's a greater return on investment if we're more aggressive in our, operations, if we hold our money more in Star as opposed to Huntington, where we're not going to see as high of a return, even with that small fee that's taken out. So I'm trying to keep. And if we look month to month, we're at $19,650 for row 7 in blue for interest in December. Before it was $20,196. Before it was $25,000 and $27,000. So trying to be as aggressive as possible to get the highest return for us. And again, that's just kind of playing the numbers in essence. It's trying to keep as much money that we can in those high-bearing interest accounts that we have for us. And
You still $21,000 in interest in December? That's a big jump from.
for Red Tree,
Yeah.
Red Tree, right. And that, we had, Ryan Nelson come from Red Train Talk. It depends on the payouts of those CDs or whatnot, when they come due, when they mature. So we're not going to see those consistent, the 21,000 per as we do for Star.
So that must have been a CD that matured.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Everything else is nothing material, I would say, on this sheet. Behind it's just all their operating revenue. That's a small figure of material. Pass on that. If we look at T2H in green, these are our expenses now. So the yellow comes from our lead sheet at the top. So the top half of the sheet deals with each of our payrolls. So typically we have 2 a month. 2 months out of the year, we have a third payroll. So I like to put at the top what the total payroll is. Then in the middle, we have each one of those payrolls separated. So 7/5, 7/19, 8/2, 8/16, 8/13. Then below that in red, there's a line, 2 divided by 26, 5 divided by 26, 7 divided by 26. I like to know month by month where we should be at according to our expenses and use that as a budgeting tool as opposed to using a time period method. Sometimes you'll look at recognition of expenses and they kind of equate it to time period. Well, we were at this point in time last year, so if we're here hitting that mark, we're good. That means nothing because you have to book every single item the same way that you did in that previous year, and that never happens. You never book everything the same year to year. So me, it's recognizing it more in a true sense that this is where we should be according to what we have by every month that we have, instead of a time period review of it, because if you're not booking everything exactly the same year to year, that doesn't mean anything. Because what does 40% mean if you don't know where you should be for that month's expenses? So that's why I like to do that. Bottom half, we have certified, non-certified. It's all separated by object code. All of our expenses are organized by object code. And again, if we look far to the right, we can see our percentage allocations right now, and we're on our mark. We're supposed to be at 50%, so 13 of 26 payrolls. So we should see all of our expenses below 50%, unless we're doing, unique items, a severance payout, for example, or the summer workers. They're only working summer, so we only pay them for that summer work. They're not working year-round. We do have more in severance benefits this year on row 18. That's going to be for the 3 employees that just retired for non-certified. Coming up, we have Sandy, Neil, and Steele, Dave Domzowski. Below that, just want to highlight row 20. That expense this year is at 0, so we have not spent anything on row 179. Prior year, it was more, but this year we're at 0. Below, I have little notes written, and on the page behind it's the definitions of those little notes that I have, but I just kind of like to show what's coming up in certain pays. So, for January, we have kind of a busy month on that second pay. So the sheet behind it, the second page to it, kind of talks on, the winter sports first first installment, curriculum first installment, and then we have the Chase Perfect attendance for the time period of October through December. And then the second page talks about the time periods of those. So all it does is kind of, lets me know, okay, we're going to have a heavier payroll for the second one in January. I'm trying to make, I can steer clear of giving too much on somebody's shoulders in payroll if I know we have a bigger one coming up. And I kind of use this to say, okay, these are the projects that we have on our horizon. We have to close calendar year, and we have to process our W-2s. Those are due so many days after the close of the year. We know we have a larger payroll in January, so it's structuring, work around knowing the different deadlines that we have and what's due coming forward. So, we wouldn't want to align everything in one pay because it would just be massive and somebody would just, go crazy in that. So, and, as Mr. Evans and me were talking about the CBAs that we have, kind of when we talk about the verbiage in there of when we align our payments, it's trying to spread things out if we can and not lump too much together on one, unnecessarily if we don't have to. We go to our next page, T2I. These are going to be our expenses for retirement and insurance benefits. Again, we have definitions at the bottom, like workers' compensation, tuition reimbursement, Medicare, Social Security, our SERS surcharge, SERS retirement, STRS, and then insurance benefits, which is the heaviest expense that we have here. I have a box around December for the workers' compensation. That's for our premium that we pay for the next calendar year that we have. If we look at the budgeted amount, that was 60,000, so we came in less, 42. I anticipated that. So now, if anything else kind of goes up, I have that cushion of available funds between the 42,000, which we expended, to the 60,000, which was budgeted, and I can move about $20,000 to a different area. So if we have more single status insurance going to family status, let's say, for example, or if they have more qualifying events, which would be the birth of a child, we would need more budgeted funds in health insurance. So this is a nice area that I can kind of pull from a conservative estimate that kind of had an idea that it would be there all along, and move it to that place and time. But everything else is kind of, set pat. We have our retirement for STRS and SERS. That's not going to materially change at all year to year, or excuse me, within the year. Our health insurance, we do know that fluctuates with, people kind of moving for qualifying events, different, time periods that we have. We have our tuition reimbursement, 13, 14, 15. 22 is the refreshments for board meetings. Our budget's 400. We really haven't spent that. We just have water that we haven't expended, so. No questions, I'll move on to the next sheet that we have. T2J, the next 5 are going to be our purchase services. So again, the yellow at the top comes from our lead sheet that we have, 3.4 million. We're at 43% that we expensed. We're on target. We shouldn't see anything over 100% in any of these line items, because the process that we do is I input all these budgeted amounts into the system. So when somebody goes to create a requisition, if there aren't enough funds there, they can't enter it in the system and it can't pass. So then they have to come and talk to either an administrator to adjust the budget, and then that administrator would eventually talk to the treasurer, and we work on the allocation. But that control is there, so they can't enter it without the funds being there in the budget. So, just kind of going through, 27 would be the professional services of James Whistler. We have our toner for the printers on 13. On 14, that's the toner service for the copiers that we have. We have 12 district vehicle and title registrations. So when we purchase new vans, we have to get the title and registration. If we go to our next, actually 46 starts the high expense amounts for the county payments that we have with the ESC, which is 25 or so employees that we have with that we expense there. If we go to page 2, again, 47 and 48 are those county payments as well. Just looking down, 57 is O'Keefe. So we saw before we were over 150,000 for revenue that was brought in. He helps us identifying court place students. The expense is, I believe, 10% of that.
10%.
So we've expensed $16,553. We anticipate potentially it could be as high as 30,000, so we budget that amount in that line item.
Can I ask you something?
Oh, yeah, yep.
Item 51, driver's education.
Yeah.
Why is it even in line item?
If we have to use it, we have it there. I'll have to look. I'll look deeper into that one. I'll look
It's
deeper. Into
probably
that one.
what?
I'll look deeper into that one.
When I first came, the driver's education was not run by us, but the signups were taken by us. So I think we took the money in and then paid the driver's ed, people that came here and ran the driver's ed. Now, if you watched the news recently, there was a big push to push driver's ed back into the schools. I don't know if that's going to get any legs or not. I haven't seen legislation in that regard, but that just came out in the last 2 weeks. But I think when I originally got here, they would take signups in the office, and I think the school collected the money and then paid the driver ed company, because they would stop and pick up the kids like right after school. And it was only a couple kids. I think most of our kids at that point in time were going to, because that was a longer period of time to get their license. So
Okay, thank you.
that's my guess.
And I can look closer too.
I-
Yeah. We have, below 57 is 58, communication consulting services, Graham in parentheses, Aaron Graham is that line item. 60 and 61 would be professional services for legal and architect. Our legal costs right now that we've spent as of December are $10,300 some dollars. So I believe that's a significant decrease from prior
It was
years.
less than an average monthly bill in the past.
Yeah.
Mr. Muccio, does that roll up all the legal services? For example, when David C. does work and John and et cetera,
John's-
that's a cumulative figure?
John and David C. correct are on that line item. Andy Cabot is in a separate line,
Okay.
which is in the, but there's not much there.
Yeah, but those are the two that we
Correct.
deal
Yep.
mostly with. Well,
Yep.
that's good,
Yep.
good news.
Below that, we have our architect fees. It's high because we've been using them just because of the assessment that we have. And remember the time period in which we pay that initial $25,000 that we had to them. Let's see, below we have board docs, row 69, 70 carpet cleaning. What I did below, and I really like this, is for the repair and maintenance accounts, 423 object code, right above row 72, is I separated the line items by description. So bus garage at the beginning, so the repair and maintenance for the buses that we have, or the storage tank that we have for the maintenance area. Then 76 through 87 deals with the district items, so air handler repair, alarm repair, boiler repairs, clock repairs, door security systems, elevator service agreements that we have. If we flip the page over to the next one, we still have our district, the roof maintenance, window screen repairs that we have. 90 through 96 would be district grounds. Below that, 97 through 106 is the elementary school. Below that, 107 to 115 is the high school. And then 116 is the pool that we have for the boilers. So it's easy to work with the maintenance department and say, these are the accounts that you have, and we can build each one of these, and we have our purchase order set up, and it makes it really easy to kind of go back and just organize as we go. Insurance, 117 is our property insurance that we have, our premium that we pay. That's at $64,000. Rental lease purchase agreement, we have our copier lease agreement on 119. Below that, pest control, 129. That's always a hot button issue. We have $5,000 set aside in the budget for that. Fertilizer and lawn care services, 127. We have $5,000 there as well. If we flip to the next page, page 4 of 5, asbestos inspection removal, 132. Pat, we have that right there in the budget. It's an inside joke. We have the Bolo stick install services, 133. 10,000 there in case we have to use it, but
We believe that we're going to receive another grant, so we'll have another set of bolo sticks to put in the middle school, high school. So once that grant money comes, we'll buy the bolo sticks, and then we'll do the install for those.
rows 137 all the way to 165 deal with meetings, certified, non-certified. 167 deals with tolls for buses and vans if they have to go on the turnpike. I remember when I was at Maple Heights and was driving we were getting ready to go far to, I think, Fremont for a football game out there. And, the question of tolls came up and nobody knew how to, do that. So now we have a set-aside account for tolls if in case it's needed that, we can expense it out there. Then we start our utilities. 441 is telephone lines. We have postage and advertising below 170. We have 12,000 set aside for that. We haven't used too much of it on 170, that row. If we go to the next page, 5 of 5, we start our utilities at the very top: electric, water, sewer, and gas, 175, 176, and 177. I'm happy with electricity, with where that's at in the budget. Gas, I'm okay with that one. The water sewer, we knew that was going to be a little higher, so I'm just keeping a closer eye on it at that point.
This is the first year that we're being billed for the surface area, the new calculations based on the amount of parking lot space and runoff, so it was a little tough for Matt to have an accurate prediction on what that might be this year. Even, we've incorporated some curriculum to give us a reduction in that, but we don't get any other kind of relief from that as a public entity.
But it's still at like only 47% of the budget. If that's halfway through, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
On budget, for
Yep.
sure. How about, actually, just like another question about some
Okay.
of the other like, higher budgeted items.
Yeah.
So like electricity.
Yep.
Does it mean that basically that we're, I mean, we're at 31%, we should be around 50, or is there a back-end payment? So I mean, are we really basically looking at like half of that and doubling it at this point, like 112, it would be like 70,000 under budget, or
Well,
65?
We, also timing too, we didn't make the payment in December, so we're gonna book
Okay.
that in January, so that's why we see a zero there.
I see.
In July, we could have paid it earlier, so it was booked in June, so also timing plays into it.
We should be at 90 though, right? If everything's equal.
Right, so that's about,
So then
just on mark.
we're still 35 under.
We think the new agreement's going to save us some money too, so I think
Yeah.
this is budgeted back,
Correct.
the new electricity agreement that we entered into, that OSC negotiated for us, so that seems to be a pretty good deal, so we'll see if those numbers hold true through the end of the year, but remember, we had a lot of talk with, actually, one of our alums, one of the parents, met with us, and their company, NG, is the one that got the contract with OSC, so we just dealt straight through OSC then on that price, so we think that we'll see some savings, and it is quite honestly, the moderate weather has certainly helped us too.
I'm sure that helped a lot. How about like line 54, for example? That is like, we have a budget of 110, we're at 15 right now. It's only 14%. Is there back-ended payments on those?
Yeah, that's our contract with PSI. We have 110,000. Dr. Caleres might be able to speak a little better on the PSI agreement that we have, but I don't want to put him on the spot, but yeah, it's.
Well, you just did. You didn't want to, but you just did.
Yeah, we do a blanket purchase order for the 110,000, so
I'm
it's,
more asking about like the budget. Are we going to be that far under, or is there back-ended payments?
We will not.
Okay, so it's back-ended, okay.
Yeah, it's their building, and
Got it.
it usually comes
Later.
2-3 months in the rear, so
It-
it will.
And PSI and some of
It will
the,
expend the entire amount.
PSI and some of the outplacement things are sometimes tough to get bills from, and they're tough, they're difficult to get quotes on prices from, so, we go through this every August, we have kids outplaced, and we have contracts with those companies, but then they haven't delivered the current pricing for that. Sometimes that comes in September and October, and it makes Mr. Muccio pull what little hair he has left out, and Dr. Caleres as well, because we know that we have to outplace those kids, but they're very, very slow and sometimes even delivering the actual contracts to us. They know that our kids are out there and being taken care of, but we don't even have the contract in place yet. So we don't have any leverage to push them to get those things sooner. So like PSI and some of those things, they tend to lag a little bit for us. And we have, I know Matt last year at the end of the fiscal year was kind of saying, hey, we're trying to close our books on, we don't even have some stuff from some of these places yet. And it's,
PSI we struggle with, and that includes our district nurse and our medical aide, and also we have a medical aide who we have to have travel with one of our students for our outplacements. And then we also struggle a little bit with our OT and PT services, just because of the billing. So those are the two we generally lag with. And so, like Mr. Evans said, in June, we were receiving bills from April and May, and so that wreaked a little bit of havoc with some of our budgeting and figuring out, okay, we had the money, but Matt closed the books, and so that caused a little bit of an issue for us when it came time to try to pay some of those things.
It makes sense, and I was just looking at some of the higher dollar budgeted items and seeing what the variances.
right, and the timing issue does come up a lot when you do work on, month-to-month expenses that you have, because, again, it goes to that, analysis where you can't compare where you were at expense-wise in the prior year to current year because nothing's the same.
Exactly,
I mean, we
yeah.
pay things at different times, so there's no way to at least mine, there's no way to accurately measure, the two between each other. I would never sit down and say, okay, we're at 40%. Not at all.
Yeah.
And at the top, I have the division, all into 12. So for the 12 months that we have, so we don't see really some have consistent expenses that we do pay month to
Right.
month. But for the majority, it's kind of, when we get the invoices, from the companies, sometimes like Mr. Evans is saying that they're not on top of it, some vendors. So we are contacting them and saying, hey, we're trying to close this out and whatnot. So there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to kind of invoicing and paying and staying where we're at. But everything's separated by line items, so it makes it a piece of cake.
Yeah, I'm sure as we
easy
get
go
closer
through.
to May and June, we'll probably see, that all shake out and they'll catch up and everything, so I
Yep.
get it. So thank you.
Yep. 78 through 196, just wanted to touch base on these. 183 to 196. These are our tuition expenses that we have. So 183 and 184 would be tuition for Monarch Autism School that we have. So 81,000 is in the budget for the 2 students that go there. 185 is for Pep Prentice. 186 is for the Pep Medical Aid. 187 is for the Cleveland Clinic Autism School. Then we have our deductions from the foundation settlement. So 188 through 193 would be those items. So we have an amount automatically taken from us from our foundation settlement for College Credit Plus, our community school deduction, scholarship deduction, any SF students that go in the reverse way, as we receive money for core place students, if we have any that are placed outside of our district, that we would be obligated to pay on that behalf. And then we have 193, which is kind of a roll-up account. So that gets deducted from our foundation, and the budget is $102,000 at this point. We have 4 students, I want to say, that come out of that line. We have 3 to Independence, and that's why we have the arrows from Independence going up, and then we have 1 from Mentor. And the reason that we have 35 still sitting in the budget account for Mentor is we sign a contract with Mentor at the beginning of every school year for about approximately 60,000. And half of that is taken from foundation, and the other half we pay out of pocket to Mentor schools. So it's just measuring, and I like to make line items, separate line items, kind of for every instance that we have. It makes it kind of cleaner budget-wise.
So this is our share as opposed to the amount that's deducted from foundation?
Correct.
Thanks.
Correct. As we go to the next set of pages, T2K, these are our supplies and materials. The yellow is coming from our lead sheet at the top. 1 through 20 would be elementary school. 21 through 33 would be middle school. 34 through 50 would be high school. And we work, Treasurer's Office, with the principals on those accounts. See where we're at as we go along the way. 51 through 54 would be district-wide. 54, when we purchase batteries, we need a line item. They don't just show up. So poster, printer, paper that we have, copier, staples that we have that at 52. Paper, that's a big one, 51. When we purchase that, we have the room next to Mr. Burek with paper. I think Mrs. Riley, Sandy has a lot of paper in her office. That's there that we have.
She does.
Office supplies, 59 through 68 as we go. Health and hygiene, 69 through 75. Software materials, 76 through 112, has all of our software. I like to put everything together to see it all and organize it. So each one of our software items that we have are grouped together there. Computer supplies, the 517 object code, which is 113 and 114. Those are technology department, Dave Wallace's accounts. We have agendas on 115 and 116. Parking passes, 119. 120 is our College Credit Plus textbooks that we purchase for the students that take advantage of that opportunity that we have. Then we start our textbooks. 121 through 125 would be the elementary school textbooks. And we have a large amount set aside for 125. That's for our elementary school reading textbooks, which we did pay in August and a little bit in September. Below, online, 129, the bottom, middle school, social studies, 35,000 was expended so far. Big purchase on textbooks there. As we go to page 4 or 5, high school textbooks, as we keep going, social studies was an $8,000 purchase. Supplemental textbooks, nothing really in elementary school out of the ordinary, except for 3rd grade on 145, it was about $8,000. Nothing else popping out as a high material item, I'd say. Everything's pretty consistent.
I have a question. too.
Yeah.
So like for the software, George,
Yeah.
are we paying the expenses out by license?
Yes.
Or basically our flat fee? So,
It's both.
Is it both?
It all depends. Sometimes it's not worthwhile getting a site license if only one school or 2 schools are going to use it.
Okay.
When it comes down to licensing for like Microsoft
Yeah, that makes sense too. Then do you look at if it's licensed, do you look at the number of students to adjust the billing then for each year, so it would be? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Let's see, 3 of 5 textbooks, 4 of 5, still textbooks as we go down, nothing big. 167 and 168 would be home ec food for Mrs. Seitz that we have for the year. 171 through 190 deal with operations, maintenance, and repairs for the district. 174 would be our snow melt and rock salt. Trash liners, 175. Electric supplies, 177. Plumbing supplies, 178. Any type of water treatment chemicals that we have for 179. 180. Boiler maintenance supplies. Lighting supplies, 184. Ceiling tiles, 189. Again, Pat, we have that in the budget there. Inside joke. 191 through 199 would be operations and repair of the motor vehicles. To classify the expenses for the motor vehicles comes in handy when we have to do the T reports for transportation. Dr. Claris is familiar with those. And we're pulling a lot of object codes for those T reports as we go, so having everything classified in order go makes it very easy when we have to accomplish those T reports as we go. Next report, T2L. These would be our capital equipment items that we have. We can see the ones that we purchased so far during the year. And again, I kind of lump everything to one, pot of money, and then we start splitting that out as we purchase items of equipment as we go. We can see row 2 is mulch for the playground. Elementary school, row 6, we bought a basketball hoop. Whiteboards for the classrooms in the elementary school. On 7, 8, master clock system. We bought item 9, a radio flyer wagon. 10, replace the black carpeting down there. 14, cafeteria tables for the middle school. Keep looking down. We have some band and orchestra equipment for 19 and 20. 27's a refrigerator for the Spanish club. That's an inside joke with Mr. Evan. 28.
Mr. Evans isn't laughing.
28's computer lab furniture that we have. 32, I think everybody's very happy with that one. Portable AC units. 36 is the Flip Saunders dedication plaque. 37's our salt spreader. So, as we come and go and expense, we build these accounts to help us see. Second to last would be other objects. Dues, fees, and memberships, rows 1 through 21. The biggest one is going to be our county auditor and treasurer fees, which is row 11. That's a conservative estimate there. So when we get our net distribution amounts from the county twice a year, they take out their, I guess you can say, cut for doing that process. The first half is going to be comparable to the second half. So we saw $64,000 expensed in August, so it's going to be in that same ballpark, give or take, for the second half of the year.
Let me ask you this question too. So because we have clean audits for the last couple of years.
Yes.
Does that reduce the fees?
Yep.
And then we have a savings benefit based upon.
Correct.
Basically the work that you and your staff has done.
Correct. That's going to be,
great.
that's on row 9.
That's
So,
awesome.
yep, with our state and IPA examiner's charge, those are our audits, our GAP and our regular audit. The more efficient, we're able to work with them, the less hours that they have to audit, and then in turn, we do see a savings there. They actually just pulled out last week, the auditors, so we all celebrated,
Well, that's great. No, just like as when we had issues.
Yep.
Versus what we have now.
Yep.
What's the variance? It's like $5,000-$10,000, or is it?
I'd have to look, I'd have to really look and sit, I can't even pull a number out.
It's just interesting, that's all.
Yeah.
Because that has a direct correlation to savings.
Right,
At school.
and with my past history too, I know, the cycles in which they go for, the items that they're gonna ask for. I have that prepared before they're ready. We have it orchestrated where our GAP is the auditor of state as well as our audit. So it's easy for them to share files between the two of them.
That's great.
So the more efficient I am with the GAP, the better it is for the audit side, I found.
That's great.
So it makes it
Great.
easier for them. 22 is going to be our bonding expenses. Mr. Dobbins, that just came up, so we have to, code it to that line. We have our play expenses, 33 and 34. Interesting note, I was working with Mr. Michaels on that, our play director, and he was trying to order supplies through the Home Depot website. He spent about 2 hours, I want to say, doing that, and he wasn't able to. So he said, Matt, we gotta, how do we get this done? So I dropped everything I was doing, and I drove with him to Home Depot, which is right in, what's that place right in?
Steelyard.
Steelyard. So I went there with Mr. Michaels, and we purchased, some materials he had for the day, and then he, put the bulk purchase on our Home Depot card with me there, and he picked everything up on Saturday. So we found it was just, we could not order it online for whatever reason, so that was interesting. We both, So.
Teamwork.
Teamwork, yeah. T2N would be our transfers out. We know the big transfer out that we had back in September that we board approved 9/18/19 was $250,216. That was the payoff of HB 264 debt. I believe we had actually 2 items of HB 264 debt on our books. So we had paid one before I started, and this is paying off the other one. So it's interesting to see how much HB 264 debt we have. We have about, when we calculated that, I think it was about an $8,000 savings there by paying it early. So that's completely paid off, and double checked with PNC Bank on that. I just have one more sheet I wanted to pass to everybody too, if everybody could take a copy and spend a little time on this.
I think I got one.
So what's being,
Together, aren't they?
so what we're passing around right now is item T2C, and this is budget versus actuals. So I do this every month. I do it in Excel, and everything is set up by rows and columns. So our rows would be our funds. So the general fund, permanent improvement fund, food service, school supplies, and so forth as we go down the line. If we just look at the general fund, for example, our beginning cash in blue ties out to our lead sheet that we had, $13,870,000. C is prior encumbrances from that prior year. Then D, column D, is the beginning unencumbered cash, which we give to the county as our unencumbered cash number. Items E through L would be the different amendments to our certificates of estimated resources. So the county does 1 and 2, 3, and so E and F would be done by the county, and we have the time periods below in the supporting documentation row. G would be the temporary, so we do that temporary in June because we have to have a temporary appropriation on the books. We have our original, which is the start to the year, 8/21. That's the official revenue that we have, and then we change our revenue every month as we have new items that come, and I kind of look at it kind of from a materiality standpoint. So if we have a small amount, I'm not going to adjust it, but if it's material, I would say we do make that adjustment. And then everything kind of traces below to the little comments. So behind each yellow box change, there's a letter, and that letter goes to the bottom, and it gives a description of why we made that change at that time. There's a date also below, so we can reference the dates in which we made those changes. So in L, column L right now, we're making 4 changes that we have for this month. And for the general fund, A is to match the lead sheet that we have. And we looked again, and we saw that was the 50,000 change for the real estate assessment that came through for all of our operating revenue that we have. And that amount, $16,121,128, matches to our lead sheet, the orange figure on our lead sheet. So that's how that number traces. M is our total revenue to date. Columns N through R would be our appropriation amendments. So when the board votes and approves changes, modifications to our permanent appropriations, we adjust according to those lines. So we have a temporary that we do at 6/26, and then as we kind of go through and have material changes, we make those changes. Tonight we have 6 changes for the appropriations. And we have the descriptions below. Nothing for the general fund, so that's still staying the same. And when we do our testing for auditing purposes, they look at column R. So above R, I have R has to be greater than S plus U. So S and U would be encumbrances and expenses. So what you appropriate has to be higher than what you're going to expense out and what you encumber. So if we're adding columns S and U together, the check is they have to be less than column R, so R has to be higher. And that's what the county uses from a budgeting standpoint. They assess our revenues and our appropriations, and they give us back what's called a do not exceed certificate. If we don't have one of those, we can't move forward with what we just did. And it's in violation of the county, and if the auditors see it, that becomes a material citation in your audit, significant deficiency. So, very cognizant at using this tool to always budget, and our legal level of budgeting is fund level, so we don't have to go lower than just the fund in and of itself to stay in compliance with our budgeting aspect. And I like to do this in Excel as opposed to really using the system, because it's a lot easier. The system, we're going from the current state software to the redesign, because, it hasn't been updated in 40, 50 some years that we have. So, it's not like Excel came along in that time period and they said, this is a great tool to use for budgeting, let's input it in the state software. Nobody did that. The state software is what it is from way back in the day. So it's, when you look at it, it's kind of like using a typewriter or computer. It's so much more efficient to use a computer to get, it done. So it's a much more efficient tool that we have. So, it's the way I so any questions with this, or I'll just kind of go along? And thank you guys for sitting through this. I know it can be a lot, but I just think it's a good practice to do a couple times a year, just to go through the general fund and be more familiar with it. Item B, we have no significant changes to the new vendors. Item C, donations received. We do have one that I would, if I could ask Mr. Wallace to speak on, it would be the donations that we're providing to the CVCC, which is all in T4A. Item
So,
T.
we received a large donation of network equipment through Champion One. Champion One is, one of their salespeople is Robert West, and his kids actually come here as tuition family. But they were cleaning out their offices and moving to Independence, and they had all this extra equipment, and they said, instead of just throwing this away, approximately $70,000 worth, which, is nothing for them. Would you like to donate it? And he's like, sure. Okay, so we look at the equipment. It's basically all these little modules for network equipment. You never see this stuff. It works all behind the scenes. But this is all high-end equipment for connecting, different sites. So things you see on the street where AT&T's working or Cox Cable or wherever, it's all high-end network equipment. So a lot of it we cannot use. So I said, instead of selling it or getting rid of it, let's donate it to the Career Center, see what they can use, and see what they can use in their classes to teach about computer networking and more of the infrastructure. So I figured that was a good cause for this. But we are keeping some of it, approximately $1,500 worth for us here, and it's going to help us out with our equipment.
I'd just like to make note of one other donation that came in. Greg Dazinski, you see Greg and Marilyn Dazinski. Greg, class of 79, and Flip was kind of Greg's idol, and Greg had a really neat story, but unfortunately he had a cruise already planned, so he couldn't be here for the ceremony. He was heartbroken that he couldn't. I sent Debbie a real nice email from Greg's, but Greg gave me $500, and his mom, Marilyn, who's a former councilman for the Village of Cuyahoga Heights, gave another $500, and that money went to provide the food and refreshments for after the dedication ceremony. So, Greg, he was talking about canceling his cruise. I said, no, your wife will never speak to me again, Greg. You need to go on your cruise. But I'll certainly make sure that Debbie gets the email from you. And it's a really, really great story. And so I'd like to thank Greg and Marilyn for their very generous donation, as well as all those companies. There's about $950 in donations to our employee recognition fund as well, that, we had the Christmas recognition for the 3 employees, so that funds that account for another 5 or 6 years, so that we really want to thank those vendors as well, so.
Item 6D is the modifications to the appropriations. Again, it was kind of what we touched base on before. If anybody wants me to read through those or comment on them, I can, or I can just kind of go forward with them. The purchase orders over $5,000, we just have one today. For $10,000, I'll let Mr. Evans, if you want to touch base more on that purchase order that we have.
GPD had originally given us a quote, and I think I might have mentioned that to you in an email, like a set price now through the end of the year. We went back to them and said, listen, we'd rather kind of do like we do with our attorneys, and it's kind of like an à la carte thing. So what you see on tonight's thing is that there are different services that they're billed for, and so they're going to bill us as we meet and as we use them, which is a little more clearly defined for us on our end of it, I think. But I think it's also a little bit more fair to them. They have been super generous with their time. And as I said before, our original contract with them was $25,000, and we probably got 4 times the service from them that we did. And Gary, I think you were part of the pool. That was 20. And we paid $20,000 for that evaluation, which again, that was an OSC price. But it's not even comparable as far as the amount of service that we've got from GPD versus what we got through the other vendor when it came to just the pool assessment. So just a pleasure to work with them. They were in again today. So that's how we're going to move forward with them. The idea is that, we've gone through the vetting process there. We're going to kind of bill them out like we do our attorneys. We'll get a monthly statement from them for services, and it'll be much more clearly defined. I think fair to them, that way they're getting billed for all the service they provide, and it's much clearer for Matt in his office to say he knows exactly what the payments are versus that set number at the end that, sometimes is a little, maybe the auditors might ask questions as what makes that number up kind of thing, so.
What kind of, if I may ask, on the new vendors, neighborhood news, what sort of advertising are we putting in
An ad
there?
for the open house.
Open house?
And we're just going to put a week, and we're kind of push us through 2 weeks. We haven't advertised with them in a number of years, and I kind of reluctant because I approach the neighborhood news like, you kind of need us more than we need you sometimes. Because they do cover some of the events, football, whatever, and we send stuff to them on a regular basis. So, but they made a call. I thought one-shot deal, maybe the one time a year that we would do something with them for a week. And we haven't done anything with them for a long, long time in the way of an advertisement. So we'll see what kind of response we get, because that's Garfield Heights, Valley View, and parts of Maple, Walton Hills. So we've sent flyers there as well, but we'll see.
Slavic Village, Independence.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm kind of perturbed about this because they're actually charging for everything. Even if you wanted to, if you've sent them an article, if we sent them an article about the open house, they would look at that as an advertisement.
That's
and
what they
would
did last
pay.
year. I sent them an article I sent them like a news release article last year, and they said, well, we'll print this if you pay us. And I was a little bit burned up about it at the
Yeah.
time, so we didn't. I thought, well, I don't need you. But they came and said, listen, we've seen some of this stuff, so we're gonna put that ad. We put together an ad, so we'll see how that plays itself out.
It should have come out today, right? Because today's
Yes,
Wednesday,
yeah.
that's when it comes out.
Yeah, should have been out today.
I've got a question on the GPD PO. My understanding from reading this is that they will bill up to 10,000, and we'll deduct from that a figure that the board would approve, and then if the amounts billed exceed the 10, then you'd come back for more board approval. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
And really, part of that, and we explained this to Jason today, it's 10 because that takes us through the end of this fiscal year for us, and, we break in the middle of the year.
Sure.
And then when we come back at the start of our next fiscal year, then we'll take a look and see where we're at. Certainly, they're gonna work with us through a possible levy in November, then we want them on board.
And I'll just echo Mr. Evans' comments about GPD. They've been fabulous to work with.
Good.
Great. And those are all the items I have for item 6.
Okay. Now, should we make a motion to approve the treasurer's consent agenda? Okay, we did that, so now we just have to vote
on it.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Yep. Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mr. Schukert?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye.
Mr. Naaman?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Treasurer's discussion, comments?
Just 2 items tonight. At the last board meeting, had a question from Mr. Naaman on cash advances on our credit card. And we did have the ability to take up to 15% of the credit limit on our district credit cards as a cash advance. It was a practice that we did not do at all in my time here. I don't believe in cash advances. It's not a good practice to do. But from talking with Huntington Bank, which we use, we've discontinued any ability for anybody to take any cash advance out. So there is zero way that can happen at this point going forward. So, so I want to thank Mr. Naaman for bringing that, to the attention
Thank
of
you
everybody here.
for putting it down. I think that's it just puts more control around the process, though. I hate to chase the cash if we're in that position. So that's all. I think it puts more control. So thanks.
Yep.
Thank you for doing that.
And then everybody has a copy of Phase 2. And this is just kind of what we were talking about. Mr. Dobbins just on having a timeline in place of what we would use it for capital improvements. Myself, Mr. Evans, and Dr. Caleres met with GPD today. So that would be item 4. And now we're rolling into item 5, which would be Phase 2, and I'll pass that over to Mr. Evans. That's just talking about the meeting this weekend, the open house.
Community open house, and Mr. Naaman had asked me, and quite honestly, just to let the board know, I would prefer that you not be part of the individual groups on Sunday. Maybe answer questions if need be, because I don't want in any way, shape, or form to look like this has been directed by the board or the administration. We've got a list of, and we talked today about the wants and needs are kind of all together. We have things together, and we have a price tag on them. So what we're going to present to the group is this is what we've heard from the community as their wants. These are the price tags involved in that. And when they break into their small groups, Mr. Whistler is going to have students kind of lead those groups, and we're going to do the sheets on the wall, and they're going to list their priorities, and then they'll put whatever their group color is next to the priority ranking on it. So we're going to come out of here with what whoever shows up Saturday to what their priorities on it might be. So that's kind of purposeful on our part. We've had some input from the board, but I don't want any way, shape, or form to somebody say, well, the board directed this activity towards a certain way. Certainly, we'd love to have you there to answer questions about, and I think it's probably more appropriate to answer questions about the process for GPD from you than from me, per se, because again, the perception that I might be directing GPD or as to where we're going. I think this has been a really good process that we've gone through at this point. We're step by step and breaking things down, and I feel very confident of where we're at, and also with the direction, with the timeline that we're headed on this. So just a little bit for where we're at and what Sunday hopes. We got an hour and a half blocked off Sunday. I'll talk in the beginning. Jason will then follow up with some reinforcement on the study that they did, and then we're going to do the small group thing, and then we'll bring it back together. What we plan to do then is, when I go out, schedule with the 3 villages, to take that data that we collect and say, listen, we had a group meeting, here's what they came up, what do you think in Brooklyn Heights and Cuyahoga Heights and Valley View? And I'll talk to the mayors about hopefully doing that like an hour before one of their regular board meetings, so people can stay and go to one of the council meetings. And so, but get and present that, and then answer any questions. Where did that come from? I'll have the report available. I'll have the PowerPoint available. They want to see some pictures. Question came up, how do we know that the plumbing needs to be replaced? Well, first of all, it's an 81-year-old building. If you got an 81-year-old house, you've probably replaced the plumbing at some point in time, or are replacing it piece by piece right now. Second of all, we've got pictures of some of the plumbing and what's happening with it. And so we have the answers to those questions that people might bring up. So,
Are meetings scheduled already?
No.
Okay.
No, I was going to get through Sunday. I was going to get that list, and then I
That's what it
was.
says, scheduled meetings, gotcha.
Yeah, and I was going to talk to each of the mayors and see what, Jerry's going to be here February 12th, but I'll reach out to them next Monday or Tuesday and say, listen, don't want to certainly interfere with anything council's doing or your caucuses, but if you're meeting at 6, can we meet in the same room at 5 and advertise that and say, we're going to be here, come. If 2 people show up, I'll talk to 2 people. If 20 people show up, I'll talk to 20 people.
And we did want to rotate 2 board members
Yeah,
at them?
yeah, right, absolutely.
Possible, or, okay.
The BEST committee has some representation by the 3 respective village councils. are they aware of the open house, and is there a sense
Yes.
as to how well they've been able to get the word out among their constituents?
What I hear back, again, sometimes my stuff's a little bit filtered, but I hear that it's good. I will tell you that apparently the people that are interested in coming as tuition people know, because we've already got 30 applications completed in our system.
They also set up tables, so each of the.
Yeah, each of the villages
sets
will
up-
have the
Oh,
tables
okay.
again with their PowerPoints.
Good.
In that, and so there's gonna be some community partners, Wilson Feed Mill, Jen Presot's the plant, Algiers plant, the sewer district's gonna be here again, so some of the local things in the community will be here and have tables set up as well.
Okay, good.
So,
Thank you. Okay.
good teacher sign-up participation. Actually, I kind of pray for bad weather on that Sunday, so people don't have alternative things to do, so if they want to do something inside, they can come here and go to the pool. If the weather's nice, they want to be outside, and if the weather's lousy, you want to be inside, the pool's open, we got pizza, come on down.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, so just to be clear, you want us to kind of just float?
Yes, yeah.
And again, because if we're in a forum where we're talking together about it, it becomes a board meeting.
Well, no,
Right?
only,
No?
no, you can answer questions. When it turns into a decision-making process is when it becomes a board meeting. So,
Okay.
just like, the finance meeting, you can come and sit and attend, as a third member, sit and attend the finance meeting, but you can't participate in any of the decision-making process. You can even ask a question of the finance committee as a third person. You can say, can you clarify what's on line 4? When it comes into the decision-making process, that's when it becomes a meeting, that's when we cross over the sunshine law threshold there.
And I used to do that, too. I'd sit in the finance meeting,
Yep.
and once in a while, I'd answer the question, actually,
Yeah.
as it turned out, but I would not participate
Right.
in any of their
And you
decision-making.
didn't vote on anything of the committee or, so.
Okay. And is that the treasurer's business? Great. Mr. Evans?
Okay, superintendent's business, A, adopt CHS school district calendar. You see the attached calendar. I'd like to thank Dr. Caleres. That's a grind, put the calendar together every year, and he works with Chat to try and make sure that we stay contractual with that. And as I said last time, once we get this one approved, we're actually going to start working on 21, 22. I'd like to, before we get out in June, be a couple years out on this as well. But I don't think see anything drastic or major in the calendar. B, adopt the middle school program of studies as recommended for 2020-21. C, adopt the high school program of studies for 2020-21. D, approve a College Credit Plus memorandum of understanding with Kent State University for 2020-21. 10, staff resignations. Approve the resignation of Ann Boswell from the supplemental position of elementary team leader effective January 13th. Nothing on employment, certified staff, employment of classified staff, employment of fitness center monitors. Thank Mr. Kelber for working on that. Approve the employment for a mentor for a new Chase employee. We have a new custodian, and we want to pay one of the custodians to kind of work with them. And then employment supplemental positions. Approve employment of supplemental contracts. Motion to approve employment list of individuals supplemental contracts for 1920 school year per the adopted wage scale. And you'll see those are head coaches for the spring, team leader from the elementary building, and then a couple of home instruction tutors that are used on an as-needed basis there. Employment substitute volunteer services. Approve reassignment of Caitlin Ackerley from a substitute teaching assistant to position of a long-term sub. B, approve reassignment of Samantha Gambetta from teaching assistant to a position of long-term sub. C, approve employment of Aaron Zink as a long-term substitute guidance secretary sub. And D, approve appointment of Megan Bowden as a school play volunteer. Mrs. Akerley is going to fill in for Ms. Boswell. Mrs. Gambetta in the kindergarten area on a maternity leave. Aaron's going to fill in for our guidance secretary, who's going to be on some medical leave, and Megan's going to help Mr. Michaels with the play. Approves contracts with Telluride for publishing student agendas 2021 year. Approve membership with the Ohio High School Athletic Association for 2020 and 21. There's no cost involved with that. And then C, adopt memorandum of understanding between the Board of Education and association with teachers regarding Article 9, and D, adopt memorandum of understanding between Board of Education and Association of Teachers, Article 31. E, approve PSI contract change form for substitute medical aid services. The memorandums of understanding deal with the intervention schedule and payment of winter coaches. We list the payment of winter coaches by sport instead of just saying for all winter supplementals, and then we have two supplementals that weren't originally in there. That one was the indoor track and the bowling, so we just want to make sure they get paid when the other coaches get paid halfway through. On that, I ask for approval of that business.
Okay. Thank you. Would someone make a motion to approve Mr. Evans' superintendent business consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Okay, Mr. Naaman made the motion, and Ms. Eder seconded. Is there any discussion?
Any questions?
Oh,
I try to kind of explain it as we go through.
Okay.
Instead of waiting until we got to the end, so.
Great, okay, thank you.
Just wanted to say thinking of Ms. Boswell and her students.
Just, I said to him after last Thursday's meeting that, maybe I have to step up my lunch buying for the fourth grade group, and it was, for that group, and I because it was Thursday, they all brought their lunches on Friday, so I went to Giant Eagle and I bought Klondike bars for the whole group, and they sent over, this big sign signed by all of them, and it was like, one of them said, "Mr. Evans, this is my best day at school ever," because it was like and it was, they were just so cute, so I have to tell you, Joy did an unbelievable job of handling the meeting with the parents, and we met with the parents and the students all at once, and that's a tough thing, and Joy did a fantastic job with that. We've got a lot of support over there, Jessica Satterley, Mr. Guillaume, Miss Meffy, so, we're gonna, and Mrs. Akerley, that we're putting in there, those are big shoes to fill, but a lot of support, and Mrs. Boswell, as much as she probably shouldn't be on some levels, is sending stuff in from home, so we gotta kind of slow her down a little bit, because that's just who she is, so, please, thoughts and prayers for Ann Boswell. I tweeted something out yesterday, and she liked it. She's still following my Twitter account while she's going through what she's going through. So our hearts and wishes are with Mrs. Boswell while she takes on this battle.
Is there some way we can send something to her?
Yeah. I've been thinking about that, so we will certainly. I know Joy just said something that I'll forward you the email from Joy that they're doing some collections so they can do some of the home meals services to maybe lighten the load on her husband a little bit while she's going through some of this. And I think that's a great thought there. That's a good donation, but maybe some other things as well that we might be able to do. So
Good ideas.
Just to do something maybe even as a board.
yes, yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
I got an idea. I'll email it to you, and you guys say yay and I do it. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Muccio, call the roll, please.
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mrs. Eder.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Superintendent discussion?
Just a couple of things. We're going to have a safety committee meeting tomorrow. We're in that 3-year cycle. We have to resubmit our plan. I have to thank Dave Wallace because when I moved up from principal to, first of all, I inherited the safety plan as a principal, and then it kind of came with me when I moved into the superintendent's role. And with the capital improvement really keeping me busy, Dave Wallace has, without me even asking him, has picked up the slack on the safety plan and done a yeoman's job of updating the plan. And it's not like going through and making a couple changes. They changed the format of the plan, so we literally had to go through and redo our plan all over again. The state in their infinite wisdom. So Dave literally had to go through what is probably a 70 or 80-page document for us and just re-add things to it. So thank you, Dave, for that. We'll meet with the committee tomorrow to have them take a look at it, and then we'll get the proper signatures on that and get it down to Columbus. It's due middle of February. So Dave's got a timeline, done a great job with that. I sent you an email about the CVC Wellness Seminar on March 5th at Beechwood. That was a seminar, if you remember, they tried to schedule last year on a Saturday, and they only had like 20-some people show up, so they ended up canceling it. So they want to do it again. It's a Thursday, I think, is March the 5th. I'll try and forward you the actual flyer to you. They are encouraging board members to attend if you can. We've already talked to our guidance counselors about their attendance, our school psychologists, our social worker, and some of our administrators about attending that. Yeah, they've already got a program together. It looks like a really nice program with some high-powered speakers to it, so hopefully we can get that up and running. We had a superintendent's CVC meeting last week that was really encouraging. Don Lewis is our league commissioner, and the approach that he takes to running our league is just so professional. There were some financial things that were a little bit shaky under the previous leadership, and Don is a retired official, and our league next year will be at 22 schools, and Don sat down next to me last night at the game and talked to me about possibly even adding maybe 7 bigger schools on the big end, so we'll be a multi-divisional conference, which gives us a lot of power and a lot of strength to do things. And my stance as a principal is always, I like the big league because we have gymnastics and not everybody does, and our gymnastics can then compete in a conference meet. We have swimming. Not if it were an 8-school, small school league, maybe 2 schools would have swimming, there would be no league meet for us. The fact that we can swim in a league meet is great for us. The wrestling tournament that we're going to host is going to have 18 or 19 schools in it. That's going to be a great 2-day event for our kids. So the fact that it's bigger, and then you talk about honors choir and honors band and the other things that we really still push on that end of it. He's talking about some kind of Jeopardy tournament for the schools as well. So it's really, it was a good meeting. Don, I think Don turns to me sometimes because my background in athletics, I think sometimes some of the superintendents don't come from a background that's as strong in athletics as kind of where I come from. So we have a lot of conversations. But I feel that our league's in a good place, in a really good direction right now. This wellness thing, I really want to see this take off, and I'll get that flyers out to you in hopes that maybe somebody can attend that because it looks like a great day. Sunday, the open house, I talked about that a little bit, and I mentioned the wrestling tournament. On the 31st and February 1st, we host the conference wrestling tournament. It's a 2-day. I just kind of sent out today on Facebook that if anybody's out there that wants to volunteer for table workers, and I think the Evans family already has a table that they'll work for 2 days. There's enough wrestling knowledge in that crew, and even my brother Mark, who doesn't have the wrestling knowledge, is gonna step up. And he said now that Brooklyn's back in the league, one of his best friends wrestled at Brooklyn. He goes, he'll come over and help with the tournament now. So it's kind of fun, and it's kind of neat to get some of the alumni back and they have adults working the tables and run a first-class tournament. Something new that just came up on February 8th, we'll be hosting the OHSAA Regional Duels dual meet tournament. So there'll be 16 teams here wrestling in a dual meet format that day. So we'll have 4 rounds, 4 mats set up in the gym, and that'll be another good day of wrestling here. And the top team from that goes to the state Final 4, so Final 8 tournament. So.
What is it?
It's the state dual meet tournament, not the individual.
What date?
February 8th. And then we'll leave the gym set up because February 9th then is then the sectionals for the youth wrestling, so.
Okay.
Busy.
So I know I get Mr. Tartare and Mr. Martin a little upset with me because the gym looks the way I want it to look with mats from end to end, but that's okay. Swimmers, outstanding performance last week in the conference meet. Vic Catler and Kenny Wojtek won their events in the meet. Our girls team finished 3rd overall, boys finished 5th, and if you remember correctly, this is the first time we fielded a boys team in several years. We've had some individuals, but we've had enough to enter a team where we can enter some relay meets. After I talked to a couple of the coaches, they think next year we might even be stronger because there's a really strong middle school group. And the fact that the reason we're not placing hires, we're just not entering enough kids in events. And with the team being a little bit bigger next year, that it looks like we'll really push to win a small school side of the meet. As Matt mentioned, GPD meeting today with Matt, Ted, Jim Whistler was there. Good meeting. Worked through some stuff. Jason, again, is a pleasure to work with on that, so I'm looking forward to Sunday and turnout for that. I'll do an all-call tomorrow as a reminder about the Sunday event, so that's it for me.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to board business, there are 2 resolutions for the board tonight. The first one is a motion to adopt, it's a motion to adopt a resolution opposing the State of Ohio's Ed Choice Scholarship Voucher Program. Let me do the second one, and then we can open it up for discussion. And the second one then is a motion to approve attendance at professional conferences as listed. So would we?
You need to keep
you do?
going the policies. Because you're
okay, I thought it was.
Agenda, and then it's discussed.
Oh, okay, well then, would, Mr. Evans, you want to do the policies?
Policies are, I'm not going to go through and read each of the policies, but no major changes, those, with the exception of what the law is requiring us to change in the audit, is kind of catch us up. The one add-on for us is the animals on district property, because we have a service dog now, and then that allows us to have provisions to have a service dog on the property. So we want to make sure that we've got some board policy on that. So everything else is pretty much as it's been, as we've had it, with the exception of whatever legal changes had to be made based on recent legislature changes, so.
Now I see item 20, which is the board consent agenda approval. I presume that everything above that was to have been for the board's consent agenda, am I right or no?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, may I have a motion to approve the board business consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Schukert, and Mr. Suchaki seconds. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, under 18B, the professional conferences, and I admit I don't remember the title of the presentation, but at the ESC on February 4th, there's a presentation that you had indicated you wanted to attend, and I think I replied and said I'd like to attend.
It's a leadership series.
Leadership series.
Leadership
Okay.
series. Do we need that?
It's free.
In that, we used to always put those in there, even though they're no cost to the district. We always used to put those in there because the board members, it's
They're
a,
reimbursed
it's
for
a,
conference.
right.
Not reimbursed, but they can get,
Paid for their
They're paid for attending the conference, so we always used to put those in the agenda.
So, I guess what I would say is to amend the motion to add the February 4th OSBA
Leadership.
conference, leadership conference at the ESC
ESC,
for
Whoever wants to.
for any
I'm fine, yeah.
for any board members that wish to attend.
Any board members? Yeah, we used to listen to names, but we don't have to.
looks like it's just you.
So, the kid, just leave it open, so, okay?
Okay, so then do we
You
need
just need
to,
a second and a vote on the motion. So,
okay. Is there, well, we had a second on the original motion, but do we need to have a second now on the amended motion? Is that the idea?
Right.
Okay, so is there?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Schukert. So we have a second on the amended motion for the board's consent agenda items.
Was it first?
Mr.
I
Chaki
seconded
was
it,
first.
So then
Okay,
Didn't phrase
Vote
it
on the
that way.
amendment, then you come back and vote on the original motion.
okay. Vote on the amendment. Okay,
Right.
so we're going to take a vote first. So, Mr. Muccio, call the roll, please.
Mr. Suchaki?
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mr. Naaman?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye. Okay, so the amended motion passes. Now, do we have to go back and?
Vote on the entire
Okay,
consent
so
agenda.
now we're going to vote on the entire consent agenda. Did we make a motion already?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
It's just a
second, okay, it's just
Or
a
do
vote
we,
then.
but this is a
Oh,
discussion.
discussion.
You wanna talk
Okay,
about
is there a
that choice?
discussion?
And I just want to address the ed choice, and I, you can wear a pair of glasses out reading ed choice proposals, just in a day's time. I think yesterday I saw 3 different opinions from 3 different groups. Essentially, this is us saying this will get forwarded to the legislators, this will get forwarded to the professional organizations and the State Board of Education, that we are opposed to the expansion of the voucher program as it currently sits. I think the most recent, Senator Dolan's proposal is probably one of the more recent ones that scales it back. Senator Huffman, if you just read the paper lately, has recommended up to 400% of the economic, which takes that household income almost above $100,000 for people to be eligible for vouchers. And ironically, Senator Huffman said it would be unfair to make a change this late in the game. That wouldn't be fair to those people that were counting on those vouchers, when this is the same legislature that, when they added the Academic Distress Commission, did it at like 10 o'clock at night, so there couldn't be any committee discussion on it, and voted on it the next day, and that Youngstown fell into that. So what is unfair now was fair then. So it's a bit of irony to take that standpoint with it. So, and if you read what Senator Lerner has said, she has said she doesn't feel comfortable with this going through without adequate discussion on it. So that's encouraging, because sometimes Senator Lerner has been one of those that's kind of been on the push end of some of the voucher stuff, so she's obviously getting some pressure to say, listen, this needs to be vetted, you just can't rush through this, where Senator Huffman, one of her party members, is saying, no, we just this needs to go in February 1st. And I gotta tell you, the parochial schools are licking their chops right now, because they are spending that money, knowing that they could be getting a windfall their way. I think the number that I saw was in excess of $300 million.
And Mr. Evans, just to kind of bring the focus back to the effect on the local district, within the body of this resolution, there's a reference to our estimate that this might cost our district, is it $200,000?
Yeah, Matt and I talked about that. So Matt would actually physically have to set aside, would have to budget a number, even if we didn't know, if we became eligible in the middle of the year, the state's going to yank that money from us. So we're going to lose. We don't have any choice in the matter. So he'd have to account for that in the budget, whether or not anybody had given us any indication ahead of time or not. So it affects us budget-wise when it comes to the budgeting process.
And we don't expect to be involved initially. However, because of our strong performance on the report card, it's highly likely that we are going to be drawn into this absent a change.
When the number one school district in the state of Ohio, Solon, falls into it, and they have this year, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So it's one of those indicators. And one of the other things because all it had to be was one D or one F in one building in your district. And Solon had one elementary building get a D in value added because they were off the charts the year before, and the next year they were still, the performance index was still very high, but because it didn't meet the value added number, it was graded as a D. And that dropped them then into the program, which is ludicrous. So one of the other proposals I saw from Senator Dolan was that it does not affect anybody that had an A, B, or C as a district the year before, and there had to be some kind of trend with the F for them to fall into. So it was not certainly what we want complete, but it was kind of meeting it the other way. And I think I just saw Jim Lloyd, who loves to get on a soapbox about this stuff. Jim Lloyd says, no, we don't want any change in it at all. Why are we going to compromise on this? This should just, the whole thing should go away.
Yeah.
And we need to pressure the legislature to say, you're going in the wrong direction with this.
Yeah. And just to kind of also underscore that this motion is supported by it's supported by the OSBA,
Yes.
the superintendent's group, and
BASA,
the treasurer's group.
OSBA,
Yeah.
the Treasurers Association.
Right.
All the teachers' unions.
Okay, so there is a consensus by
Yeah.
a large majority of the school population, educators.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just wanted to mention that I'd spoken with Representative Crossman over the holidays, and he and I had a nice conversation. He's very familiar with our district. He represents the city of Parma, and so he greatly and keenly understands the terrible impact that this may have on the Parma schools. And that's the primary bread and butter of his constituency. So he also was a bit surprised to learn that our district may get rolled up into this at some point, but he certainly can appreciate how concerning it is to us, as well as certainly to Parma in the immediate term.
Certainly our three. Representative Crossman, Representative Robinson are strongly opposed to this, and even Senator Dolan has come out against this. And Senator Dolan, is one of the higher ups in the Republican Party. So I hope he gets loud with his voice, and Senator Lerner as well on this stuff, because this has got to be kind of a bipartisan deal. Certainly, Senator Huffman is just it's hard to read some of the things that he's saying right now. It just really is, and and he was part of the education deregulation bill that came from the superintendents in that part of the state, and now I think he's counting on them for support. And I thought, how in the world can you can't possibly support this? And he down where he's representative at, he really has a minimum number of parochial schools, so it's more about charter down there.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one step or one initiative that we as a board can take and let our voice be heard. So I certainly support us approving this. Is there any other discussion?
Well, the fact that they're even getting money and they're not even held to the same standards is really, that makes absolutely no sense at all. And we as public school education, we have to meet these stricter standards each and every year, and yet,
Frustration is beyond belief. If you work in a public school system, it makes you want to throw up. It just does.
But I go back to, make sure you do your homework.
Right.
When you go to the polls to vote, because there are people within our district who have voted for people who have been assigned to educational positions that are for vouchers, that are for charter schools. And so just do your homework. Be
And-
smart.
and-
It affects us.
And,
It can.
good point, you gotta ask them, because it's becomes, and it's gonna stick a siphon into us dollar-wise, as it has all districts. And so, whereas before, a lot of times when legislators were running, they wouldn't get a lot of education questions, those questions need to be at the top of the list with anybody running for public office right now. Where are you at on this? And
If you care
really-
about public schools.
Right.
Because if you don't, if you want
But
to
even
be-
if you don't, you make them say,
Yeah.
where they're at, so people
Yeah, yeah,
are
so you know.
aware. People are aware, this is the position, they want to siphon money from our district.
Well, thanks for your work in talking, I think you've had some small group conversations with some of our legislators, and that's helpful.
Excellent meeting with Senator Dolan before Christmas, and he met with 3 of us, so it wasn't a gang-up type thing, myself, Linda Reed from South Euclid, Lyndhurst, and Phil Wagner from Fairview had a really good conversation. I think, seeing what he's proposed, a lot of that, the roots came from that conversation, so very happy to see the direction that he was headed with that, so.
Well, thank you. Mr. Mucci, I'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye, the motion passes 5-0. Let's see. We're now moving to board discussion, community reports and comments. Mr. Souchaki, is this a point where you have a small presentation to make?
We can do it that way.
Is this the right time, or am I catching you
Yeah,
off
that's
guard?
okay. I was going to do it during this part of the presentation, so.
Okay.
Okay, at our last board meeting in the Career Center, we approved, I'm going to just mention this specifically, an update to the buildings, okay? $2,699,884.62. Plus another $100,000 for security updates, which is actually film for the windows, plus another $50,000 for GPD to start doing some design and construction work for a few other improvements. So with that kind of money being spent, I thought it might not be a bad idea to tell you what we're spending it on, okay? So it's a 5-year project. The HVAC system is essentially complete now. That was this past year they did that. Some of the roofs are now done. Glass blocks, I did not realize, glass block looks really solid, doesn't it? Should last forever. Not when your building's 45 or 47 years old, whatever the exact time is. The joints between the pieces of block start to break down and they start to leak. And the only thing you can do is replace the whole thing. You really can't patch it, it doesn't hold. Structural steel, we have the same problem above the pool. In fact, they were very pleased to see we have so little rusting in our building above the pool because of all that humidity. The Career Center has its share of rusting, of structural steel. And then the driveway and parking lot. So that's the whole project. Year 1, which was this past year, the mechanical work for HVAC is complete. Now they're getting used to how do we actually use it, right? There's this neat software program to interface to every little motor that opens and closes a vent, right, in the entire building. They can set every one of them remotely. I mean, it's really significant, and it's probably going to take them another year just to figure out all the parts to use it, and, oh, by the way, to fix the things that were overlooked by the installers. I know Hal Kendrick, who's the ops guy, made some comment, said he had to go back to the vendor and say, hey, you didn't design this right. I can't use what you told me I'd be able to use, and they had to go fix it. Just an example. Year 2 is the big one, and we got more roofs plus the structural steel, and you see some indication of some of the rusting on structural steel. and glass block. That building is surrounded by glass block everywhere. So the exterior design is going to be modeled after the new section. You've been in the Valley Inn restaurant? That's the new section. In fact, that entryway is new. The original entryway is in front of the building. Okay? So level 6, level 6 has no glass block. It has gray metal panels instead, and there's blue tinted glass underneath the panels and then you have the plate glass for the full lighting. Okay, so that's the theme that's going to be taken around the building. So here, for example, now we're in the very front of the building. You can see what that gray, those metal panels used to be glass block. They're going to block those off where it no longer matters, because after the building was built, they dropped a whole bunch of ceilings. So the glass block is illuminating the space above the ceiling. Doesn't help much. It has to be replaced anyway. Going to be, long run, much more efficient to replace that glass block with metal. But the places where the glass block is still illuminating the building will become windows, kind of like this. So you can see, you can't tell on the left very well, but there is glass block on that right-hand side that's coming toward us, and on the left. And it's plain glass over there, so you're going to get the blue stripes, and then they're going to have the steel. So that'll be the look of the new look. The third year continues the second year, so that $2.7 million I read to you is a 2-year part of the project. The next year, they're going to start working on the driveways and parking lots. And then other work that's going to be done, replacing water pipes, concrete work around the building, water drainage, and security. That was that one item, $100,000, for talking about some of those security updates. And I think that's the last slide. So I don't want to take any extra time, I don't want to take a lot of time to do this. Do you have any questions about any of that?
Interesting.
Okay.
Thank
So
you,
that's
it's good to see.
yeah, it does help to actually see it. That, by the way, is what the building looks like from above. You can see that way at the end is that level 6. So, thank you, Mr. Wallace. Yes.
Just had a quick question on that. I'm not sure if GPD works on that too as the
It
architect.
is all GPD.
Okay, are they seeing more entities go away from the glass block if they're removing so much of it from there? Or is it,
That wasn't discussed. It was
Okay.
just said the glass block is going to need to be, it has significant infiltration of both air and water.
Right.
We need to fix all of that.
right,
Patching it means it'll just go somewhere else,
Right.
right? Next year, it'll be a endless patching. So their recommendation was, and half, 3/4 of it maybe, some significant portion of it is above the ceiling and you can't even see it. So that's why they said just replace it. Just seemed to make the most sense. Okay, one other report from the Career Center at the organizational meeting. We elected officers, and I'm now the board president for CBCC.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Mr. Naaman?
Just a couple things, actually. I'm looking forward to the open house on Sunday. Hope I have great attendance there as well. Also, attended the basketball game yesterday against Brooklyn, and just wanted to congratulate Mark Wilder. Him and his family were there, and he was honored for being put into the Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame in Ohio. So those are all the things I wanted to say.
Ms. Zetter?
I just wanted to say, I'm glad that we have this financial literacy as part of our coursework for our middle schoolers. I think that's excellent. We approved that, but I should have mentioned something when we were in that segment. Also looking forward to the open house. I saw the flyer in our Valley View newsletter, and also I saw at LA Pete's when I was there last week. They had it on their counter, so that was kind of nice. And they said they had just gotten it like the day before or something like that. I was also impressed tonight with all our Student of the Month. I love seeing the variety of our students, how well-rounded they are, and is a good group of people tonight. I'd like to also say thank you to all those who donated to our school through the network equipment, Mr. West, and special thank you to the Dzinskis with their $1,000 for our Flip Saunders event. And I think that's everything. I look forward to the open house this weekend as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Schukert.
I want to thank Mr. Durazio for donating to my brother's scholarship. That's always really appreciated. I attended the CVCC Parent Night as a parent, not a board member, because I think my son's going to be doing one of the programs, but I love doing things in different roles because it's very interesting as a parent to see the programs. You look at it very differently than I think a board member. You know, you just put your parent hat on. So it was fun. That building is huge. It was, there was traffic. We had him driving too with his temporary license, whole other thing. But there was so much traffic just to get into it that we ended up having to park in a totally different lot, and Owen got his first driving experience in major traffic. So it was very well attended, very well attended. And then I still haven't sent out a doodle, so I just emailed myself to set up a finance meeting. So I'm on it, Joe. That's all I've got.
If I can comment a little bit on your comment, you're seeing that meeting, not just in 2 roles, but in 3 roles, right? As a board member here, as a parent, and as an educator yourself. So you really have an interesting look at a parent's night.
I want to go back to school. Another degree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to thank everyone who's involved in this Sunday's open house event. A lot of planning and effort goes into it, and I'm sure it's going to be the success that it's been in the past years. I also was going to echo some of Tom's newsletter that came out today, and congratulations to our students on the Momentum Award. That's truly a remarkable reward because, as I understand it, it recognizes our performance of a diverse range of our students. It's not just one group of students who excel. It's the whole student population that's showing outstanding performance, and their teachers, of course, who are helping them get to that level. Congratulations to our mock trial team and the advisor, Mr. Pasica. And finally, as Mr. Evans noted, the level of cooperation and the financial support that the Village of Cuyahoga Heights has shown as we've, and they have worked together to get this electronic sign, get it off the ground literally and figuratively, is much appreciated. And so many people are going to benefit from this cooperative effort. Those are my comments. Okay, so future agenda, would this be time for future agenda items? Yes. Are there any topics for discussion, future board meetings? Okay. Agenda information. It's noted that the Board of Education members received their agendas several days prior to the actual meeting, thus they have had considerable opportunity to study it and ask questions, etc. Upcoming regular board meetings. Upcoming board meetings for 2020, Wednesdays at 7 p.m., February 12th, February 26th, March 11th, April 8th, April 22nd, May 13th, May 27th, June 10th, and June 24th. I now would like to make a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC Section 121.22G4 for the purpose of preparing for negotiations with public employees. I've made that move. Okay, it's been seconded by Mr. Naaman. Any discussion? None? Mr. Muccio, call the roll, please.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mr. Naaman.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. We are now in executive session. It is 9:24. Make a motion to reconvene in open session. I'll make the motion.
Second?
Ms. Schukert got the second. All those in favor? I guess it'd be aye. Okay, we are now in adjourned, and it is, do I need to do a roll call?
Yeah, we got
Do we do a roll call to come back from executive session? Okay, sorry about that. So, Mr. Muccio, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Schukert.
Here.
Mr. Souchaki.
Here.
Mr. Naaman. Mr. Dobbins.
Here. 5 present, none absent. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn Do I need to do the time in?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are reconvening back into open session. It is 10:03 PM. Now, may I make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Schukert moves, Mr. Naaman seconds, all in favor? Aye. 5 yes, no zeros, let's go. Adjourned at 10:04 PM. Thank you.